when phones just ring, emails ignored, service charge high, can't be afforded. You're stuck down low, heating turned off, doors won't lock, emergency lighting off, fire hazards high, no one to fix.
Welcome to This is the GSA Way podcast, episode 10, Complicit or Compliant. In this episode, we'll have a little recap on the service charge, where we're at with that one, because we're pushing back on some of that. We're going to look at something that's called a subject access request, how you can see the data that your housing provider holds about you. I will give you links and guides and tell you a little bit about that. I'm going to better educate you on SLAPS, Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. This is something that is a tactic not just used by housing providers, it's used by other people as well, such as dictators. Well done, Ruth Cook. You find yourself in good company there. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that, how you can avoid it. You can't avoid it, they're coming for you if you're going to be vocal, but how you can navigate and best manage it. And then, as this is the last podcast of 2024, we've got a little Christmas quiz called Complicit or Compliant. All that and more on this episode of This is the GSA Way.
At the helm, but the culture ain't right. Complaints every day.
Service charge is something that's becoming much debated of late, and it's clearly being exploited by some, not all, but some housing providers. And it's a cost that becomes harder and harder to warrant. When you're not receiving the service, yet the service charge is going up, and your CEO's wages are going up, yet your wages aren't going up and the cost of living crisis is coming on. It's something that's leaving a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And I think in 2025, we're going to see a lot more pushback on service charges. However, when we got our recalculation as re-estimated, as you would have seen in a previous podcast, unaffordable housing, expecting an extra £250 a month over the next 6 months, and this was due to start in November. And as I've said before, residents said, can you have a look into this? This isn't fair. This isn't right. We can't afford this. This is a worry. And I did. And the first thing that became glaringly obvious is there was an error in their math. So we pushed back on that and they went, oh, yeah, whoops, Daisy. There was an error in our math. We also said, well, look, we need a section 20 because we can't trust your math. We need to check it ourselves. They responded to some people and were late responding to others. So they breached that there. Then the pushback came from the home ownership team, who were the ones who were late in pushing this out. Oh, if you don't like it, go to first tier tribunal. Well, that's not how the process works, and I'm sorry that we have to keep explaining processes, legal expectations to GreenSquareAccord, but we do. So it is now being correctly raised as a complaint, so we can take it through their complaint process, stages 1 and 2. When we're not happy with that, and inevitably we're not going to be, because they're going to dig in deep and do whatever they can do to protect themselves, it can then go to the housing ombudsman, and then we can take it perhaps to a first tier tribunal after that. But we would have been through all of the processes and all the stages, and it would have been done correctly, something that GSA don't like to do. They struggle with doing things correctly and properly. So that's all happening. So there isn't a response. There isn't really an update yet. Now, the next thing that we've done is we've reached out to Annalise Dobbs, because many people who pay a service charge, it will be paid for via universal credit, housing benefits, etc. And Annalise Dobbs, surely, Oxford County Council, surely have a duty to try and protect this budget. If they're being overcharged for services, as we were, as GreenSquareAccord have now admitted, yeah, we got that wrong, we shouldn't be charging you that. And this is before we've even gone to through the complaint process. The first hurdle was, we got the math wrong on that one. So should be someone in government, local authority, who's going, well, we need to look over these figures. We need to find out how much you're overcharging us, if you're charging us correctly. And when they don't adhere to the Section 22 requests, then surely there should be some more concern raised within local government. We've emailed Annalise Dobbs. Now, she's been off. She was all over Twitter for being out in the Middle East somewhere. I can't remember now. Please forgive me. I can't remember where she was. There was quite a bit of backlash on the Twitter feed from people going, this is all very well, but actually you're needed back here where your constituents need you. And this is sort of the backlash of people when we're struggling, when there's a cost of living crisis, when there's homelessness, when there is all these things happening at home. And I don't know who's right or wrong. We have a part to play. We have a stage in the world politics. I get that and I understand that. I think she's been pushed out there out of the way, to be honest. I think Keir and Angela, they pushed her to the back. Go and do some of this. But her constituents are very upset. We're saying, well, we need your support. We need you back at home. We need you doing things here. We've got damp mould. We've got, poverty. We've got homelessness. We've got child poverty, child neglect. We need you back here in the UK. She's completely ignored. We've only had replies from her office. The local councillor, her husband, Ed, he's popped round. He keeps coming round. Oh, well, we'll get a meeting. I keep telling him that meetings don't work. GreenSquareAccord don't want to have meetings. Then they're going to send someone junior. And the last meeting we had was with that awful home ownership manager who just sat there going, we're not going to BS you. We'll come back with the answers when we got them. And, of course, never did come back with any answers. It was just a tick box exercise. You can find out more about that. So he keeps coming back. I keep showing him around. I keep showing him faults. I keep asking for updates. There's been nothing from there. So as far as I can ascertain, there is no support from local government. There is no support from your local councillors. They're just impotent about it. And part of the reason is because they need people to build homes. So they're not going to call them out. And we keep going over this same ground. So although Ruth Cook gets a pay rise, we haven't received pay rise, not in line with the cost of living, yet she is for failing. So the service charge will continue. It will be picked up again in the new year. Their complaint, first stage response to the complaint is due end of the week. This is currently Wednesday. I don't think it's due tomorrow, but it's too late to get this one. We'll pick up again on that in the new year. So service charge update, not much happening there. Okay, so what is a subject access request? Any organisation that holds your data, you have a right to that data. You're allowed to know what they're doing with your data, how they're processing it. And one of the things that you can use this for is to get internal emails because they're talking about you, they're discussing you. If it's your issue that you've reported and it's being lost, you want to find out where it's going. And this was the first time I issued a subject access request was early on, 2016, 2017, something like that, where the reason for doing it was because I was reporting issues and we wanted to see where these issues were getting lost. And sure enough, you could just see them being bounced around. It's probably services, it's building maintenance, it's that, just arguing. It's like a hot potato. Now, this is something that I do quite frequently. And the last one was to find out what was going on because obviously Steve Hayes, their communications director, had reported me to the police for harassment by sending him emails. Knowing that I hadn't sent any emails, I thought, well, let's get this on record. Let's find out what emails he's talking about. And, of course, there weren't any. But it did show, again, all these behaviours, these corrosive behaviours that we're going to cover in our little Christmas quiz. So you can get hold of these emails. So what I'll do now is show you a bit of information on how you can run a subject access request, and there will be a link below and in this podcast so you can find out how you can do with a template for sending subject access requests.
If you want to know what personal data an organisation holds about you, submitting a subject access request, SAR, is the formal way to go. Whether you're dealing with a housing provider, employer, or any other organisation, the process is straightforward, and you have a legal right to access this information. Step 1. Write your request. Begin by writing your SAR. You don't need to use any special form. Just make a clear request in writing. Be specific about what you want to know and include relevant details like your full name, address, and any reference numbers that might help the organisation locate your data. You can email or send a letter, but it's often better to keep a record of your request. Step 2. Send the request. Once written, send your SAR to the organization's data protection officer or customer service team. You don't need to provide a reason for your request. Just state that you're exercising your right under the data protection laws. Remember, the organization is required to respond within 30 days. Step 3. Wait for the response. After submitting your SAR, the organization should acknowledge your request. They have up to 30 calendar days to respond, though it's usually quicker. You can expect to receive a copy of all personal data the organization holds about you, which could include emails, records, and documents, information on how and why your data is being used, details on who your data has been shared with. If the request is more complex or involves a large amount of data, they may ask for an extension of up to another 30 days. Step 4. Review your data. When you receive your data, take your time to review it. You may find helpful information, such as correspondence or internal notes that could support your case, or perhaps identify errors that need correcting. What to expect if your request is denied. In rare cases, an organization may refuse to provide certain information, for example, if it relates to ongoing legal proceedings, or if it would adversely affect others' privacy. However, they must explain why your request was denied. If you disagree with their response, you can ask for a review or take the matter to the Information Commissioner's Office, ICO. Sending a subject access request is a powerful tool to gain transparency and control over your personal data. So if you feel something is missing, or you just want to know what's being held about you, it's worth using your rights to ask for it.
Now, obviously, as again to pick up on the behaviour, GSA didn't respond properly. So they sent everything which had my name in, but we became aware a while back that they used my initials, BJ. It was unfortunate during school, but you put up with these things and you learn to embrace it. So yeah, I'm quite happy to use my initials. Now they use it in not such a friendly, not such a nice way. It's a bit like secondary school bullying going on. Oh, BJ, eh? It don't fucking bother me. It bothered me when I was 12. It doesn't bother me now. So they used that. So I pushed back. I said, well, hang on a minute. And bearing in mind, because I can't communicate with GreenSquareAccord, all of these have to go via their legal team. God knows how much that costs them every time they forward on an email from me. So the first email we had, so to prove that their process doesn't work, I emailed their lawyer and said, subject access request, please. Here it is. Boom, send that. She then came back and said, oh, I didn't get this 2 weeks because I've been on holiday. Well, you didn't have an out-of-office reply, and if you did, it would have had someone's email address and I would have sent it on to them, but you didn't. Then they came back and said, our client will respond within 30 days. And I said, well, 30 days of when? When I submitted it, or 30 days when you got back off your holiday? Oh, no, we'll do it from the 1st of, I think it was the 1st of November. So they did. They got that back on time, but they'd only sent emails where my name. I said, well, hang on a minute. You're using the initials BJ, so we need all of those. So they had to do another run of the data, and that brought up a whole trove of internal emails, which show just how nasty the culture is at GSA, at GreenSquareAccord. Just how corrosive and far from the promoted front that they push out there. It shows their true nature. Now, we could do a big file dump here and you go, here, go and have a look at all of these. But actually, we'll be just using flavours of them throughout. So you can, because it's good to back up things. And we'll get onto this when I come on to the slaps bit. You want to keep things factual. And if I've got the email there, then that proves it. So we send that. You can send it. They've now responded. It's still going to the ICO because the redaction in the emails, if it's an email about me, there's no reason why so much of it should be redacted. So we're going to probably push back on that. That'll be something to look forward to in the new year. And we keep raising complaints with the Information Commissioner's Officer. Again, they seem a bit unable to really do anything. It's like the Housing Ombudsman. You have these bodies in place. The Housing Ombudsman, the ICO, and they get a slap on the wrist. They go, oh, yeah, sorry about that. This is GreenSquareAccord. Yeah, sorry about that. And then they promise to do better, and then they don't. So it's just a hurdle, just something for them to ignore. Anyway, you can get your emails. Here is that subject access requests. If you want any more information that wasn't covered, then please reach out to me, ben@housingsector.co.uk. I'm happy to support you with this. It's not just for GreenSquareAccord. It could be your bank. It could be anyone. Okay, so you've got your subject access request. That is going to help you find out what's going on internally. Now, when you do become too vocal, when you do start getting some traction, you start building a platform, they are going to come at you. And this is called a strategic lawsuit against public participation. And although it's not illegal, it's kind of frowned upon. And this impacts journalists, activists, and it's being used to bigger and less degrees, throughout the sector. This is a tactic that we use to stop criticism. It's currently being used on a lot of social media activity. Airbnb people are saying, well, you left a negative review, so we're going to threaten you with legal action, take down that review or else. And most people will go, I've got that legal letter, I can't afford the tens of thousands of pounds. And GreenSquareAccord actually put that in writing to me, their lawyers. This could cost you tens of thousands of pounds. Well, I hadn't lost, so how can it cost me? It's not going to cost me anything until I lose. And it is by design. They're to stop you, to go, get out. Now, GreenSquareAccord claimed that in an internal email, and we'll cover more of those later, they claimed that their use of legal action was nothing to do with the Housing Ombudsman. So the Housing Ombudsman ruled in my favour, and this was affecting myself and 43 other flats. They ruled in my favour. GreenSquareAccord went, we don't agree with that. Pushed back, and there was a 6-week turnaround period, at which point GreenSquareAccord got a thorough telling off. I mean, I've had some bad school reports in my day, but this one was really bad, shocking. And then there was an internal meeting. And in this internal meeting, GreenSquareAccord discussed the Housing Ombudsman's finding. Well, it was a big meeting. There was other things discussed. But at some point, they discussed the Housing Ombudsman report, how much they would pay the other residents and myself. Or the Housing Ombudsman dictated how much they're going to pay me and suggested a similar amount. They paid every resident a lesser amount, even though all of the same things had been affecting them. And then during this meeting, they also discussed what they could do to stop me publishing it online. And that meeting, I think, was on a Thursday or Friday. And the following Wednesday, I had legal papers served to me. I was served at my door here by someone handing me papers. Here's your legal papers. So it was very much related to the Housing Ombudsman's finding and what I was going to publish online. And in those legal findings, they said, right, you must take down your website. You are not going to be annoying. You are not going to say anything. You're going to delete your social media accounts. All that. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm going to go to court. And this is the problem with slaps, is that we don't know how many people this is affecting, because most people, I would say 9 out of 10 people are going to go, I don't want any part of that. At which point it ends. You never find out about it. It's only a few people, like Muggins here, who go, no, I'm going to fight it. I'm going to take it on. I'm not going to shy away from a fight. Come on, then, let's go. I'm in the right. I have a right to complain about the service that you are providing. I have a right to raise these issues. And remember, if you're going to ignore the issues, I have a right to seek external support. And that may, and does in this case, include putting them all online. And to their home ownership manager, who doesn't want to be seen, I'm going to be all over the internet. Well, don't do things that are portraying a bad light. This platform, none of this would exist if you did your job properly. I would be doing other things. I doubt if I'd be podcasting. I'd have moved on to something else. If you were providing a service that was acceptable, if we were living in homes that were safe, warm and dry and affordable, if you were able to respond to things in a timely, courteous manner, none of this would exist. It only exists because you keep giving me more and more ammunition. Now, with slaps, you're going to go to court. If they keep pushing you and you keep saying no, you're going to end up in court. Now, this was frowned upon by the judge. The judge was very critical of this behaviour. And it's now been debated in the House of Commons, and it's getting me a lot more support. It's not just me that GreenSquareAccord are using. Remember that awful email that Steve Hayes wrote to the Oxford Mail? It was in the last podcast. Here's the extract where the veiled threat of legal action.
The headline and comparison to Grenfell. As a social housing professional, I, like some of your readers based on the comments on this story, find this comparison offensive and misleading. Can you explain on what basis you feel it is justifiable to compare a fire which was contained to a kitchen with no casualties or injuries to a tower block fire in which 72 people tragically died? The only reference to Grenfell appears to have come from the person mentioned above. The last false alarm was Wednesday. Unfortunately, people only tend to listen when there has been a fire. Grenfell is a prime example. The building this person lives in also has a stay-put policy, which has been clearly communicated to them. You have taken this unverified information from an unnamed source and created what by any measure is sensationalist and misleading. I would request that you amend this headline to remove the reference to Grenfell. Given the reputational impact this could have and the concern it could create long into the future, I will have to consider what additional steps we can take to get this addressed if you are not willing to do this. I fully understand that our job is to provide timely responses to you. This is something we have done many times previously for your outlet. In each of the previous occasions we have provided statements to you, your journalists have given us a fair time frame within which to respond and dealt with the stories professionally. As a result, the stories are balanced and well researched. I have to say that in this instance, I don't feel this is the case, and that this falls well below the journalistic standards I have experienced from your publication previously and regularly experience from others. Here is our statement for the story. I would be grateful if you can include it and respond to my other points as soon as you're able to.
Now, look, we know that local press are struggling. They're struggling financially. So, they're having to use clickbait to drive in ad revenue. So they're really struggling, as is a lot of printed press. So the last thing they want is to publish a story where they could get taken to court. And Steve Hayes, by making this veiled threat, is pretty much saying, go on, we'll take you to court and we'll sue you. And the Oxford Mail can't do that. So they're shutting it down here and there. Now, it's a disgraceful behaviour. Let's look at so many other people who have been accused of using slaps.
Donald Trump, the US president-elect, has been known for using lawsuits as a tactic to intimidate critics, journalists, and media outlets. His legal actions were often aimed at silencing opposition, including lawsuits against journalists and authors who published critical works about him. Silvio Berlusconi, the former Italian prime minister and media tycoon, frequently used legal action to target journalists, critics, and political opponents. He has been accused of using slaps to silence media outlets that reported on corruption or his business dealings. Saud al-Faisal, former Saudi Arabian foreign minister, Saud al-Faisal, was involved in a series of legal threats against critics, journalists, and authors. The Saudi regime, including figures like al-Faisal, has been accused of using legal intimidation to silence dissent, both domestically and internationally. Rupert Murdoch. The media mogul has faced accusations of using slaps through his media empire, News Corp. Murdoch has used legal threats against journalists, whistleblowers, and critics of his outlets, attempting to silence negative reporting or investigative work that exposes misconduct. Rebecca Brooks, former CEO of News International, was involved in several high-profile lawsuits aimed at intimidating journalists and activists. These cases have been seen as attempts to suppress coverage of scandals involving the company she led, particularly the phone hacking scandal. Prince Andrew, Duke of York. Prince Andrew has been involved in legal action against individuals and media outlets attempting to cover his alleged involvement in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. These legal threats have been seen as a way to prevent the publication of critical stories and to silence public criticism. Hassan Rouhani, former president of Iran, Hassan Rouhani, and other members of the Iranian government have been accused of using slaps to silence journalists, human rights activists, and critics of the regime. Legal actions have targeted those speaking out against human rights abuses, censorship, and political repression. Mohammed bin Salman. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, has been involved in legal threats against journalists and activists who speak out against the regime, including those criticizing the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Slaps have been used as a way to intimidate and silence dissent. Vladimir Putin. The Russian president has used legal intimidation tactics to silence critics and political opponents. Putin's regime has been accused of using slaps to suppress opposition and journalists who report on corruption, human rights violations, or government misconduct. Boris Johnson. The former UK Prime Minister has been accused of using legal threats to intimidate journalists and whistleblowers who criticised his handling of various political issues. These lawsuits were often aimed at suppressing unfavourable reports and avoiding public scrutiny.
Now, here's what you must remember. If it isn't true, don't say it, and definitely don't write it down, right? It might be funny for me to say, Ruth Cook is a ruthless crook. That might be funny, but unless I can prove she's a ruthless crook, I can't say it and I can't write it down, because she may not be ruthless, she may be very lovely to some people, and she might not be corrupt. So unless I know for a fact and I've got evidence that Ruth Cook is a ruthless crook, I shouldn't say it, I should not say Ruth Cook, ruthless crook. I shouldn't say it. It's not true. I can't, for example, say that Ruth Cook is cruel to old people and mean to children. I can't say that. I can't. Now, hang on a minute. If you're an old person living in one of our properties and you can't afford it, the heating's not working, the lift's not working, and you're stuck in your home and there's no support, that could be considered being cruel to old people. So perhaps I can say that Ruth Cook is cruel to old people, mean to children, Well, I mean, there was that case last Christmas where that family had no hot water or heating, couldn't bring anyone round because the house was so cold, so that ruined that Christmas for those children. And there are children that have rats running around their heads, and there's that diesel generator incident that was right outside a child's bedroom. I perhaps could say that Ruth Cook is cruel to old people and mean to children because I've got evidence to back it up. But I'm not going to say that about Rufus Cook. You see how easy it is? I'm not going to say that about Ruth Cook. Okay? You must be careful what you write and say. And that goes for abuse. Don't throw out abuse on Twitter and X, whatever you want to call it now, because they could come back and say, and a judge is going to look at it and go, oh, you just called her this and called her that, or referred to him as this. And that doesn't win your favour. Keep it factual. Now, from your subject access request, if you've got lots of emails that prove this pattern of behaviour exists, then you've got something to say. So, you can use that then as evidence-based. Keep it factual, try to keep it non-emotive, and remember, unless you're happy to read it out in front of a judge, don't write it. And since starting this, I have always kept it factual. If I write it down, there's evidence. Now, a lot of people will say to me that they'll send me emails and they go, and we know GreenSquareAccord have done this. They've sent some things through on the hope that I will publish it, and they'll go, well, that's not true. He's made that up. It wasn't vetted. So I do, if you say, look, here's something that I'm suffering at the hand of GreenSquareAccord, I do say, can you send me the internal emails? And a lot of people unfortunately go, no, I don't want to do that because I'm afraid of being evicted. And I understand that. There's no pressure on me, but I won't publish it unless I can verify it. And as long as I've taken steps to verify that, then I'm happy to publish it. But this is the threat that we're under. There's a horrific story coming from Herefordshire, blocked plumbing, blocked sewage pipes, all the same things that we've had here, that they can't upkeep because they don't do their regular checks. They don't flush out and line the pipes every 10 years as they probably should do. So there's a big issue going there. And I've said, look, let's get this online. Let's share it. Let's get some photographs. Let's get it online. And this lady's gone, I really can't. I really don't want to because I'm afraid of what might happen. And I get that. As I said earlier, 9 out of 10 people aren't going to go through with it. And that's what GreenSquareAccord thrive on. That's what they go on. They can say it's one troublemaker. No, it's one troublemaker who's standing up to you, who is willing to go to court and who is willing to put it online because he thinks what you're doing is abhorrent. Ask me. There will be others. I think they might have threatened the other Facebook group. I think they might have threatened them because he went very quiet for a while. Look, if you're struggling, if you're going through it, don't go through it alone. The more of us that come together, the harder it will be. And this is that service charge thing that we're going to push through. There's lots of groups that are coming together, and there are lots of independent groups that go, lawsuit, I can't deal with that. But actually, the more of us that come together, and Shaq are really good at bringing in these groups. If you think we've got cladding groups, we've got service charge groups, we've got leasehold groups. The more of us that come together, the harder it's going to be. And I think the service charge one will be the one that pushes it over the edge. It will really bring us together so we can focus together. So look, you're not alone. They are going to use these tactics. It's there. It's a rule book that they use. This is what you do. Maybe it'll be illegal one day. That's what this debate was hoping to bring in. Stay strong. It's not nice. It is difficult, but you get through it and you learn more. Stay strong.
Complicit refers to being involved in or having a role in wrongdoing or unethical behaviour, often without taking direct action, but still supporting or allowing it to happen. A person who is complicit may not actively commit a harmful act, but by failing to intervene or by turning a blind eye, they are seen as part of the problem. For example, if someone is aware of illegal activity in their workplace and does nothing to stop it, they might be considered complicit. Compliant, on the other hand, refers to being obedient, willing to follow rules or instructions, often without resistance. A compliant person may go along with what is asked of them, even if they don't fully agree with it, simply to maintain peace or avoid conflict. Being compliant doesn't necessarily involve any wrongdoing or malicious intent. It's more about being passive or accommodating. For example, a compliant employee might follow a boss's orders, even if they don't personally agree with the decision, just to keep things running smoothly.
Okay, so that's your definition of complicit and compliant. So let's find out who amongst GreenSquareAccord and externally, if they are being complicit or compliant. Okay, so we start off with Ruth Cook. Let's assume Now, with the post office, we found out this week that Venables woman has gone, oh, I didn't know. They didn't keep me updated. And that's what you need to be careful of. If you're being complicit or compliant, Ruth Cook is probably going to hang you out to dry at some point and say, I didn't know. I didn't know all these things were happening. So be aware, she could be hanging you out to dry. So let's start with Sophie Atkinson, who is their Executive Director of Governance. Now, is she complicit or compliant? Well, she did lie to the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office. That's right. She, in a bit of tit for tat, reported me to the ICO as my GreenSquareAccord residence website. They responded saying, have you contacted Mr. Jenkins? And at this point, I was actively trying to contact them, and they were going to great lengths, including court action, to not engage with me. And yet, in this email, what did she say?
Hi, please find the most recent correspondence. There has been a long history. We have also offered Mr. Jenkins the opportunity of meeting with us, but he has not responded. He continues to collect the personal data of residents on his website. We have put in place a contact management plan with him, due to the unacceptable nature of his behaviour towards our employees, and we do not intend to pursue any further communications with him, as he only serves to escalate his behaviour. Thanks.
She's also been very crucial in the legal threats. She submitted an affidavit. That was part of her. She would have helped create that. She would have helped Julianne Britton to write her affidavit. So they were very much created in that one, the legal action and the legal threats. So that would be Sophie Atkinson. So you tell me, is she complicit or compliant? I have to say complicit on that one. If you put down complicit, correct. Give yourself 1 point. Steve Hayes, Communication Director, complicit or compliant? Well, he is very much pushing out that narrative, isn't he? Sell, the positive things we do. We're great. We're that. He's also very much saying you shouldn't believe what this Mr. Ben Jenkins said. He's this, he's that. He also lied to the police when he said I'd been harassing him and I could be violent and dangerous. So he very much is complicit or compliant. If you said compliant, you were right. If you said complicit, he's right. Now, he might be that he's told what to do, so there could be a bit of both. But at this point, he is complicit. He knows the behaviours that he's doing aren't fair. They're not right. They're not in the keep. And what about that Grenfell comparison? When he wrote to the Oxford Mail again, that awful email that we used earlier, he wrote to the Oxford Mail and said, how dare you make comparisons to Grenfell? As a housing professional, I find this offensive. Let's look at some of those extracts.
The headline and comparison to Grenfell. As a social housing professional, I, like some of your readers based on the comments on this story, find this comparison offensive and misleading. Can you explain on what basis you feel it is justifiable to compare a fire which was contained to a kitchen with no casualties or injuries to a tower block fire in which 72 people tragically died?
Yet, we have faulty smoke alarms. We have residents who are being dismissed as troublemakers. There is a pattern there. The only thing that hasn't happened yet, fortunately, is there hasn't been a fire that has taken the lives of multiple people. Steve Hayes, if you do ever find yourself on a prison landing due to, harassment, wasting police time, or God forbid, corporate manslaughter, please use words like, remember his own name. Go on, say that on a prison landing. See how far that gets you. Steve Hayes, if you said he was compliant or complicit, yeah, you have a point for either way. Yeah, it's just for fun, isn't it? Maxine Epsley, OBE. She replaced Rachel Crownshaw, and she kind of got pushed in once she got her OBE. Not seen any changes. She's not driven any great responses. Now, is she complicit or compliant? Well, in an email where she was asked, due to the subject access request, to provide all emails, her response was, I only wrote to him because the housing ombudsman made me. Oh, well, hang on, let's look at that email.
Hi, both. The last one I have from Mr. Jenkins is an email he sent last Friday in response to the apology I sent him, which was one of the HOS orders.
So you didn't write to me because you thought the things that had been upheld and the things that you apologised for were genuine. You only did it because the housing ombudsman said. Oh my goodness me. Well, I mean, at best complicit. At best compliant, but it's complicit, isn't it? You're not prepared to put your name to something unless the housing ombudsman made you. And what else causes us concern? Because this head chief operating officer doesn't understand a subject access request. She thought she only had to send emails that she sent to me. No, you're supposed to send any emails in which you've discussed me or my flat or any data information about me. Another concern, complicit or compliant? Again, it's a bit of both. Give yourself 2 points. Julianne Britton, Customer Service Director, has since left. Now, I often gave Julianne Britton the benefit of the doubt, and when I say the benefit of the doubt, I thought, she's just been compliant here. So when she wrote that I was upsetting junior female members of the team, unable to provide any evidence, that was another subject access request. Please provide that evidence. Unable to do it. Here's a subject access request. Please provide me those call recordings where I have been. Wasn't able to do it. That then removed itself from future contact management plans. And what about the affidavit that she sworn? This is a sworn affidavit that she stands in front of court. Where I had given her the benefit of doubt.
I find the defendant's conduct to try to appeal to my better nature, insulting and belittling. He considers my actions are based on the instructions of others, and that I do not and will not stand by them if I spoke to him off the record. I have never given him reason to believe my personal opinions are different, and that I am merely a puppet of the claimant. Regardless of his intentions or thoughts about my values, the way he has tried to contact me to discuss them most recently is very disturbing.
She actually swore in court that she did not like the fact that I was saying that she wasn't falling. So she's compliant by her own words in a sworn affidavit. Rachel Crownshaw, another one who since left. She was the one who was actively pushing, let's pump up the voice of the customer. However, internal emails reveal.
Hi, could you please put a divert on the following so that all emails sent in come to the customer care inbox, regardless of the addressee. This has been requested and authorised by Rachel Crownshaw and needs to be applied as soon as possible, please.
That's right. She was the architect of the communication plan. Now, was she told to do it? She's moved on also. Her and Julianne have both moved on to a new housing provider. Let's hope they can flourish. Let's hope they can put this negative attitudes behind them and they can embrace a better way of working, a way that is more conducive to a housing sector that thrives and survives. Let's hope so. The home ownership team. Now remember, in the last email, she won't put her name to it. She gets a guy free. Send this out on my behalf because I'm not putting my name to it because I don't appear over the internet. We covered that earlier. Yet not only that, she takes a wage, yet she gets someone to check her emails. Go.
BJ has coordinated a number of identical complaints about the service charges, and I have had to compose a response letter. I'm aware that whatever I say is going to end up all over his website, so I wondered if you would lend a professional eye to review it.
So she's unable to get Section 22s out on time. She misleads team members and residents. She's... I don't know, just let's not go into it now. But here she is, not even happy, not even able to write an email without getting it checked off higher up. Complicit or compliant. Okay, let's move away from GreenSquareAccord. It's clear there's lots of people who are complicit and compliant, and most of them are compliant. And complete. They're both, aren't they? They're just there's no separation. I've written a quiz, and you can't distinguish between them because they've told what to do and they're doing it, so they're complicit and compliant. Let's look at some external bodies. What about the Chartered Institute of Housing? What about 4 million homes? What about the National Housing Federation? Well, the Chartered Institute of Housing wanted me to become one of their guest speakers, but Steve Hayes told them I wasn't allowed to, and they had this big conversation. Alex Gibson has now blocked me on LinkedIn for some reason, so happy to talk with me, and then a few conversations with Steve Hayes blocked me. Let's look at some of those.
Hi both. I hope you're well. Redacted has already been in touch with Redacted about this, but wanted to drop you a note about it too. We have an issue with the panel that Redacted is due to be talking on, and I could do with speaking to you about this urgently. Please, in the meantime, can I ask that you urgently amend reference to one of the other panelists on the session, the one about the future of the housing officer role, who you currently refer to as social housing tenant and head of resident group GreenSquareAccord. They are not a tenant of GSA, and they are not a representative of GSA anyway, so this is misrepresenting both us and them. I can explain why this is an issue when we catch up, but can confirm this on behalf of our organisation. So would be grateful if you can change this ASAP. Many thanks.
Hey, apologies about the confusion here, and you will have seen that this has been amended. I am free this afternoon for a chat. Please do send an invite over. Thanks. I'm meeting redacted at 10:30 if you want me to dial you in.
Oh, yes, please.
4 million homes who take government funding, plus they get housing providers to fund them so they can put on their websites, we're part of 4 million homes. Again, one email and a phone call from Steve Hayes and they drop me like a hot potato.
Hi, I'm contacting you regarding an upcoming webinar which you are running on service charge on the 15th of May. I see that you plan to have Ben Jenkins on the webinar, and I wanted to provide you with some information. Mr. Jenkins has a website and social media channels under the name The Housing Sector, which he presents as a legitimate basis of him making appearances at events and webinars. From experience, what usually happens is he uses said events as a platform to criticize and make accusations about GreenSquareAccord. This was the case when he appeared on the Social Housing Roundtable podcast, which you can view here. Mr. Jenkins has a long-running campaign against GSA, which he runs from his website, www.greensquareaccordresidence.co.uk. This campaign and its impact has led us to pursue legal action against Mr. Jenkins, which is ongoing and which resulted in him signing a legally binding undertaking in November of last year, which you can read about here. Successful court outcome protects GSA customers, GreenSquareAccord. Mr. Jenkins regularly uses his website, social media platforms, and any means necessary to make unfounded accusations against our organisation and particular individuals. An example of this can be seen in his most recent blog. GreenSquareAccord, 2024. The Ministry of Truth, GreenSquareAccord Residence. There are many others on his website. While I understand one of the purposes of 4 Million's homes is to provide a challenging voice on behalf of social housing residents on matters like service charge, something I would absolutely endorse and encourage, I am sure you would want to do this in a balanced and constructive way. I do therefore feel it necessary to point out the information above so you can make a judgment on whether you feel this is an appropriate individual to appear on your webinar so that you can make an informed decision. While we would not appear on the same webinar as Mr. Jenkins, it feels fair that with regards to any allegations, assertions, comments about GSA, we would have a right to reply. Having shared this information, I would appreciate a response to these concerns, and if Mr. Jenkins is to appear on the webinar, how you plan to ensure this is done in a balanced way. I am happy to chat through on the phone or team if it is easier. Many thanks.
Hi, just getting in touch to update you. Having considered your email, we offered Ben the opportunity to speak to video about the work he is doing within the context of housing sector around service charges, and we would show the video at the webinar. He has decided not to do this. We had already taken down our publicity about the event. I am going to update our website accordingly now. Wishing you all the very best.
They got rid of me and said, no, we're going to censor him, don't worry. So you're being guided and directed by GreenSquareAccord and others to get your pay in. So complicit or compliant. Chartered Institute Housing, when they drop me, are they complicit or compliant? Bit of both again, really, isn't it? What about the National Housing Federation? Goodness gracious me, Ruth Cook is on their board. So when we've got Ruth Cook on the board and the National Housing Federation who influence politicians to build things in their favour so they can build these new homes, so they can help Labour meet the 1.5, is the National Housing Federation complicit or compliant? What about Kate Henderson, their chief, their operating officer, they're the head of whatever her title is? Good grief, we can't afford to keep paying her accommodation and traveller costs. She's always bouncing around the country, influencing pressure. And with Ruth Cook on the board, well, hang on a minute. What sort of pressure are you influencing? What sort of behaviours are you endorsing? You knew, Kate Henderson knew the behaviours that Ruth Cook was guilty of through this platform and others, through the Housing Ombudsman, through the fact that she's not brought any of the promises to life. She knew, and yet she's still given a place on the National Housing Federation. MPs and councillors. Now, we already know they're being influenced by the National Housing Federation, upon which Ruth Cook is a board member. So they're certainly complicit, aren't they? They're going along with what she says, the guidelines she puts out, everything. Oh, yeah, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to meet that target of 1.5 million homes. If we're going to do it, you got to talk and work with Ruth. So there's no support for residents. And this isn't all MPs. There are some MPs who are going a long way to support residents within their constituencies. just not many of them. It's not as many as we'd like. So perhaps they're complicit. Counsellors, inactive, unable, complicit. What about legal firms? Well, look, we already know that I've had 3 legal firms tangled up with this case already. And they're profiting. They profit from the legal action. They profit from the court costs. They profit. It doesn't matter to them. Win, lose or draw. GreenSquareAccord is still going to have to pay them. For every letter they have to write, for every email of mine they have to forward on, they're taking money from us, profiting from a not-for-profit. So look, they're complicit. But they're also guiding it, aren't they? They're also handing out these suggestions, so they're certainly compliant. The police. The police turned up at my door with Steve Hayes having not given them any evidence whatsoever. There were no evidence of emails because I hadn't sent him any emails and I hadn't been stalking him at events. Yet the police, without any, just because, and through the police complaint that we had, the police said, well, he felt threatened. We can't help it because he felt threatened. Well, I feel threatened when the house is leaking, when the flat's leaking, when there's damp and mould, there's black mould, there's doors that don't lock, there's lifts that don't work. I feel threatened. But I didn't take you to didn't call the police on you, did I? Perhaps I should do. So look, there's the police. They're involved, aren't they? Complicit or compliant? Well, they're just complicit. They go along. And this is a thing that's happening in far reaches. I mean, freedom of speech has become something that's almost impossible now. It's been clamped down on. And that's not a debate I want to get into because there is some freedom of speeches which, is it hate speech? Is it this or that? Perhaps we need to work. There needs to be a way out of this. It's, never mind Orwell's 84. It's 2024. So the police are complicit in this. Now, what about the independents? Oh, was I disappointed to read this? Let's have a look at an email Matt Baird sent.
Hi, I'm sure you've seen, but Ben Jenkins has now started a podcast. He discussed none of this with me beforehand, and I certainly didn't put my name down to be mentioned in the conversation. He did at least say that I'd told him multiple times not to focus the roundtable at the time on GSA, and I did my best to enforce that. I'd like to work more with GSA and met Redacted at the West Midlands hustings recently, so hopefully there's the chance to have a conversation at some point. Thanks.
Hi, thanks for your message. Don't worry, I didn't think you'd be involved in this. Yes, always keen to discuss any potential partnerships. Cheers and hope you're well.
Now, I spoke to Matt about this. I had a phone call about this. Shared him with the email. He then sort of dug in. Oh, it's out of context. So talk to me. Then I said, look, okay, I don't want to hang you out to dry, mate. Why don't you come on the Housing Sector podcast and we can talk about this and other things. And he agreed to that. But then dropped out. And to paraphrase Betty Davis, you are involved, Matt. You are involved. You know what you're doing, but you want your PO. And how many other independents sit silently on the fence because they want that PO? It goes back to that profit or not-for-profit. So, complicit or compliant, profiting from a not-for-profit. If you know what's going on, if you know the behaviours, you're complicit, aren't you? So there we go, a Christmas quiz where really there aren't really answers. There certainly aren't any prizes for it. All right, let's wrap this podcast up. That's it for 2024. It's been another very strange year. Very strange year. I mean, obviously, all of this is sort of impacted. It's the second year we went into it with legal action pending. Thought we closed all the legal action off in 2023. They didn't allow that to happen. They brought it up in the end of 2023, which we were hoping to get closed down in 2023, led into 2024. It then got adjourned. So it's been throughout 2024, finally getting that one dismissed in August. Then we've had the police knocking on the door, been arrested. We've had that ongoing, continue to be maligned, continue to be, Steve Hayes' practice of, it's one troublemaker. What he says isn't true. He's got it in for us. I'm not asking for anything that isn't reasonable. I'm asking to live in a home that is safe, warm and dry. I'm asking for you to fix your issues. I don't think it's fair that I should pay you a service charge whilst we've got a hole in the roof that you won't confirm or you won't fix, while we've got lifts that are flooded with water, have to be pumped out, whilst we've got doors that don't lock, whilst we've got fire alarms that don't work, whilst we've got faulty smoke alarms. All of these things, it's not unreasonable. And then I'm paying you a service. We pay you to provide this level of service, and when you're not able to do it, and then you go, oh, do you know what? We got that cost wrong. You owe us extra. It's not fair. I'm not asking you to come round here and take me off to shopping in New York for weekends. I'm asking you to provide a service that is in line with the service charge that you pay. that we pay, and you're not doing that. So look, it's not fair. And why do I keep going on this? Because there are people behind me who are too afraid to do it, and we need to get it done. So it needs to be fair and just for us all. And if you can't do it, please step out of the way, quit your job, go and do something new in the new year, so we can start weeding out these bad, poisonous apples. It's difficult to know who within GreenSquareAccord really is just complicit and compliant, who doesn't have the brain cells to do anything, to step out, you know. And I say it, and I've said it before, there are many there that have been promoted well above their station, and they're just taking a wage, profiting from a not-for-profit, and they're complicit and they're compliant. They do what they're told, and by doing what they're told, they're complicit. Look, some of the internal emails didn't, you know, were quite eyebrow raising, should we say. One of them, they don't like my design work.
BJ certainly hasn't got an eye for design.
So what you're saying there is we don't disagree with what he said, but we don't like the font in which he used it. You know, so they say, here's that complaint letter. Oh, what a horrible font. Ignore that. You don't like my design work. I couldn't give a shit. I don't like the way you run homes into the ground and then sell them off as dilapidated stock. So there we go. But it wasn't all bad news. Have a look at this one.
Hashtag Ben Jenkins is GOAT, greatest of all time.
Well, there you go. Like Muhammad Ali said, it ain't bragging if it's true. See you in the new year, everyone. Have a great Christmas.